The Soul Redeemer, Book 2, Chapter 25C. Nicole had been left in the hotel room to wait while Sam and Gus procured an invitation to the fashion show that evening and were now shopping for the appropriate attire for the black tie affair. When the guys returned, Sam set up his computer and equipment while Gus changed. Gus stepped out of the bathroom a few minutes later, and Nicole had to keep herself from whistling. Gus headed toward the door. "On my way." "Just about there," Sam said as he made a few more technical adjustments and Gus opened the door. "Testing, testing. You copy?" "Copy that, Harry. All set." "I've got visual. Going silent." "Agreed." Nicole watched the screen with Sam. They watched him step out of the room and into the hall, then into the elevator, then out. He stepped up to the street and hailed a taxi. Nicole said, "I thought Gus was going alone." "He is," Sam replied. "Then there's someone following him. Aren't you worried that the guy in the elevator got into the taxi with him?" "What are you talking about?" Sam asked. "Didn't you see him? He's right there beside Gus in the cab." If Sam didn't know Nicole better, he'd think she was crazy, but considering Maria and the men in black, he decided he wanted to see for himself. "Lord, open my spiritual eyes," he prayed, and then said, "Harry, breaking silence. No auditory feedback necessary. Just turn your head to the right." "Stop." "Well, I'll be." "Gus, blink once in affirmation if you see someone beside you, twice for negative if you don't." 2 blinks. Sam said, "Well, buddy, we do. You're being accompanied by a very large angel dressed in a black tux like yours. He picked you up when you got into the elevator and followed you into the cab, so if anyone mentions a bodyguard, just agree with them. He'll be allowed wherever you go." 1 blink. "Going silent." Nicole asked, "Gus is wearing a camera contact lenses so that we see what he sees?" "Yep, except that the digital images that show on our computer screen are much more powerful than the human eye can see. Gus basically looks right through the lenses and sees normally. But we have the ability to see wider areas than he does and to zoom in for a closer look. And what we call wires for auditory sound are not really wires at all, just bugs like you had, except that they're not embedded. They're just resting on the skin. We can hear everything he hears and more with them, and we can hear him at all times, even though he can't hear us unless I push the talk button." "And that's what I'd be wearing if I have to go in?" Nicole asked. "Basically," Sam answered, "only your contact lenses will be made to look just like Megan's. There will be an almost invisible insignia on hers that we'll have to copy." "What if they use one of those devices and it detects the bugs on me? Won't they find them and know that they've been compromised?" Sam looked at Nicole. "Yes, it's possible that they'll be detected. However, we have a new technology that they don't have yet as far as we know, and it causes a misreading in the device so that it sees the bug more as a freckle and not a piece of technology." They watched and listened in silence as the cab pulled up in front of an expensive hotel and Gus paid the taxi driver. Then he and his bodyguard walked through the front doors and into a hallway. He walked up to the doorman guard. "Uh-oh," Sam said. "He's got a bug scanner. I guess we're about to find out how well the new tech works." Gus addressed the guard and said, "I'm here to see Macchiato." "Who's Macchiato?" Nicole asked. "Shh!" Sam warned. The guard picked up the scanner and ran it over Gus's body. He looked at it and ran it again, then opened the door and said, "Enjoy the show, Mr. Frank." Sam answered Nicole's question. "Macchiato isn't a person. It's a code word for this new type of fashion show. It means marked or stained, which is an actual literal description for these guys and girls being displayed and then sold as sex slaves for the remainder of the night." "I thought these types of things would have gone out with the internet. Isn't it illegal?" Nicole asked. "Basically, yes, it's illegal. But our system is so wacko that very rarely is it being addressed. They'd rather go after the Christians than the perverts. And you're right in assuming that the internet stole a lot of the personal porn viewing for a time. But people get tired of the same thing, and after a while they're looking for something new. They could look at all of this in the privacy of their own home, but that's old school. Instead of private viewing, the trend is swinging back to public viewing, and the larger the audience, the better. Thus, the macchiato fashion show. How sad, Nicole gasped. Are you going to get all emotional on me? 'Cause I don't have time for that right now. You don't have to watch, you know, Sam said. In fact, when the show begins, I suggest you bury your head in the pillow and pray. They watched as Gus walked through the door and into a plush, luxurious auditorium. Most people were seated and were drinking alcoholic-looking beverages. The pre-show girls on the stage had already begun dancing to loud, seductive music. As Gus stepped inside and turned to scan the room, Nicole noticed that there was a large bar in the back that still had a long line of customers waiting for their drinks or whatever drug of choice they were purchasing. The stage at the front of the auditorium divided into 3 runways that flowed down the center and both sides of the audience. Nicole stood up. You're probably right. I don't want to get in the way. She went into the bathroom and ran some cold water on her face. She knew that Gus would try not to look at the defilement that would be going on, yet he had to stay until the show was over in order to have a chance of speaking with Damon under the guise of purchasing one of the models. God, this world is such a mess. How can you stand it? As Nicole held a dry towel over her eyes, she realized that however messed up the world was, it was her country that was the biggest consumer of the sex trafficking industry, and she saw that she must step up her prayers against this defilement. Sam had briefed her earlier on the types of things that would go on in the course of the show so that she wouldn't be shocked if she happened to see something. This was far from a clothing fashion show. This was a full-blown pornographic show ranging from sexual innuendos to full-blown sex acts on the stage that encompassed everything from heterosexual to homosexual acts to orgies, masturbation, torture, and even bestiality. The kicker was that they saved what they deemed the best for last, the child porn show. Nicole knew that most of these people had not chosen this lifestyle. Even if they had not been through SRA or trauma-based mind control, they were hurting people who had been enslaved and forced to do unimaginable things according to the wills of perverted humanity. Many were being sold by parents or guardians into the sex trade. Some were kidnapped victims, and others were runaways who had been snatched up into this system. Some had stumbled into it through the intoxicating poison of drug addiction mixed with the desire to become a famous model or actor, and some had been purchased as sex slaves from other countries. There was at least one common denominator among them. Regardless of how they ended up in this place, they were all hopeless. Hopeless of ever receiving love. Hopeless of having a normal life. Hopeless of experiencing joy or peace. Hopeless of escaping their life of slavery. And each of them would do whatever they had to in order to survive and to avoid the punishment of their captors. Any appearance of pleasure that was portrayed on the stage or in the company of the John afterward was all an act. Nicole fell face down on the floor. Oh, Lord, how your heart must hurt. Mine feels as if it's going to break. Isn't there something that can be done for them? She wasn't sure how long she lay there, but she got to her feet and opened the bathroom door when she heard Sam talking. The one in the purple tie? Nicole went and stood behind Sam. Affirmative, Gus replied. It's uncertain as to whether or not he recognizes me, but he's a bigwig in the sex industry, and I took him down at a similar affair in Sydney about 3 years ago. Okay, watch his move, Sam said. You may need to abort. Not yet. I had a beard at the time. My cover may still be intact. Copy that, Sam said. But on my mark, you get out. Sam had been intensely watching the screen, and now he leaned back as he continued to help Gus patrol the room for possible signs of detection. Nicole made coffee and brought a cup over to Sam. She sat on the edge of the sofa with her eyes closed. She suddenly opened them and asked, Sam, have you seen a man with a long ponytail? Yes, why? Well, I'm not sure, but in my spirit I see someone like that, and I feel that he's dangerous. Sam hit the talk button. Eyes on the ponytail. They watched carefully as Gus turned his head. There, Nicole said, on the far wall across the room. Sam directed Gus. He's watching the purple tie, and now he's looking your way. Turn slightly to the left. Ponytail's communicating via lapel. The camera above him is moving toward you. Look up, slightly to the right. We have movement in the gallery above. I see two, no, three from different directions heading toward the elevator. Gus, stand up, exit your row to the left, and walk toward the back of the room, Sam continued to direct. Two guards walked in the back door and looked toward the place where Gus had been sitting a moment earlier. Looks like the purple tie recognized you. Abort. I repeat, abort, Sam ordered. Roger. Nicole couldn't follow the images that flashed across the screen as Gus worked his way through the crowd of people, using them as his cover. If the situation hadn't been so serious, she would have laughed at his attempts at kindness during his escape. Sorry. Here's your purse, ma'am. Excuse me, sir. Did you drop this? Sorry. Sorry. Oh, pardon me. What is he doing? Nicole asked. It looks as if he's crawling on his hands and knees through the auditorium. He's working his way to the front. The back would have been too difficult to navigate through. Gus had stood up and was very near the front stage. There were 5 guards lining the stage to keep back any of the crowd who might try to get involved with the show or the people on stage. Gus used the element of surprise as he suddenly leaped up onto the stage between 2 guards and ran past the frenzied actors toward the rear stage exit. Nicole hadn't seen the angel bodyguard once since he had entered the hotel, but she caught a glimpse of him again as Gus charged past the dancers. He stopped beside one young lady who had been virtually hiding behind the other actors. Nicole yelled, "Stop! Tell him to stop!" Sam turned and looked at her. Why? Didn't you see the angel, Sam? Sam hit the button. Gus, stop and turn back around. As he did, Sam saw the angel standing near the young girl. See the girl with the red negligee? Grab her and take her with you. What? No time, Gus said. He started running toward the backstage exit. He was almost there, and the guards were already on the stage coming towards him. Gus, that angel's here for the girl. You have to go back and get her. They watched as Gus stopped, looked back, then ran to the girl, picked her up, and flew out the back door of the building, unseating 2 security guards with Jackie Chan-like moves. He stopped to look around and get his bearings. Sam said, I've got eyes on the street. Go to the right. Good. Turn into the alley. Now go to the door standing ajar. The car will pick you up 1 block west of your present location and 1 street to the south. Can you get there? Affirmative, Gus responded. They were standing in the back room of a tobacco shop. The sign in the front window was blinking, open 24 hours. He put the girl down and said, I can take you to a safe place. Do you want to go? To be rescued? Nicole about melted as the girl, who couldn't have been more than 12 years old, looked up into Gus's eyes with such a hopeless, lost expression and nodded her head yes. Okay then, Gus said, I need you to listen to me and do whatever I say. Will you do that? The girl nodded again. Gus took his jacket off and wrapped it tightly around her, then took her hand and they walked through the shop without interference. He looked out the front door of the shop to get his bearings. They were on a side road behind the hotel. No sign of trouble yet. They exited the building and walked as quickly as possible down 1 block and stepped out into the crosswalk to go 1 street south. He heard a shout, picked the girl up, and ran. A bullet whizzed past his ear as he rounded the side of the building on the other side of the street. Nicole breathed an audible sigh of relief as the car pulled up next to them just in time. Gus threw the girl in and yelled, Drive! Before he even had both feet in the car. He shut the door and pushed the girl to the floor as another bullet flew through the rear window and exited the windshield on the passenger side. That was close. Where to, Sam? He thought for a moment before answering. There's a safe house on the north end of town. Do you know it? Gus said, Been a long time. What's the address? 357 West Oak Street. 302, Sam directed. I'll call ahead and let them know you're coming. Copy that, Gus confirmed. Nicole disappointedly asked, You mean he's not bringing her here? Shouldn't we take care of her? Sam turned and looked at her. She's not a lost puppy, Nicole. Just because we found her doesn't mean we get to keep her. Get a hold of yourself. We've got other things to worry about. He looked at Nicole's face and realized he may have sounded harsh. I'm sorry, Breeze. She'll be in good hands, really, she will. They'll know how to take care of her better than we could, and she's going to need a lot of care at first. You just called me Breeze, Nicole said. You're right, Harry. I need to thank God for rescuing her and remember that what we're here to do. We probably should get used to calling each other by our working names. And another thing we should do is get some sleep, Harry said. You take whichever bed you want. I'm going to make a call and watch until Gus gets back. Nicole suddenly realized that she was exhausted. She lay down on the bed nearest the window and said, "Good night, Harry." She never heard his reply. In fact, she didn't hear anything until she woke up at 6 a.m. She looked around and saw that Gus had returned and was asleep on the other bed. Harry was asleep in the chair. She got up and used the restroom as quietly as she could. As she washed up, she looked in the mirror, and reality suddenly hit her. She had been so preoccupied that she had forgotten that Gus's failure to procure an interview with Damon meant that she was going to have to face the enemy.